Alrighty, it looks like the attendee list has leveled off. Once again, I'm Ken Kibler, Director of Training and Client Support for eTruckBiz. I want to thank everybody for joining us after the holiday. I know it makes for a crazy week and a short week, but we appreciate you being here. Today, we're going to talk about some of the same topics with the volume as well as the other trends. And without further ado, I'll turn this over to Jeff Walzak.
Thank you, Ken. And as always, we need to remind you that eTruckBiz is not endorsed, sponsored, approved, or otherwise affiliated with FedEx Corporation. eTruckBiz is the home of the business support system. eTruck Business Support System is made up of Budget IQ, which minimizes your expenses and maximizes your margins, Performance IQ, which simplifies your operation, and Admin IQ, which allows you to stop wasting time on non-revenue producing admin tasks. A lot of people have been asking and say, Jeff, you keep putting that thing up there about some slides up there about the business support system. How do I get started with that? We'll tell you who to contact here in a second. It is Becca. But how this works is you contact Becca, you get a business evaluation set up so you can see where your business is currently at, or if you're looking at entering the space to see how the one you're looking to buy, I guess it is, if that's what you're doing, shapes up. Then you get a business plan. We'll help you develop a standard budget and actual expense plan so you can create your goals. Then we work on your strategy based on your plan, pick your business support system products, and then you monitor results through the software. So that's how it goes. And for a limited time, you get all this, the first part of all that free, which is very cool. Contact Becca Manders at becca@etruckbiz.com. Okay, let's look at the volume as we always do every week. And the pickup side, the good news is it looks like the bleeding may have stopped. That's good. However, we need some more pickups. It's flat to slightly up. That's good. Delivery stops definitely flat. But if you look, if you're able, I didn't show that on the graph here, but we're up about 7% year over year this time last year. So that's good stuff, right? And if you look at this graph, based on history, you should start seeing a bounce here pretty soon. And productivity. Routes dispatched flat, and then the productivity, the actual stops per dispatch started coming up a little bit, but we got a long way to go to get to the trend line there, Ken.
Let's get back to that 100 mark, the old
Okay.
Mendoza line.
All right. So with Network 2.0 expanding more across many more CSAs, it's critical we once again address a subject that it's come up before, but based on some changing circumstances, we're going to need to talk about it again. We're going to talk about some driver pay strategies for Network 2.0. As Network 2.0 is rapidly evolving with traditional day-to-day models becoming unsustainable as operations become more complex. Contractors will do well to explore new compensation strategies that are more sustainable for the Network 2.0 era, where expanded delivery windows and wave dispatching will be the norm. So, folks, the operation without a doubt is changing, and the way you pay your drivers, you're going to need to consider changing that too. Right? So, there are three main areas where the pay method makes a big difference. How you pay the folks makes a big difference. So there's wasted owner's benefit, compliance risk, and wasted operational window. So first, the average cost of bonus programs that gets added to the budget is about 15%. This is a significant wasted owner's benefit that can be avoided with the right pay approach. This is the biggest reason CSPs struggle financially. So when we look at, or if you can do this too, if you would take what you pay the folks, you've got your base pay, and then take any kind of bonus program, extra stop amount you pay folks over and above some sort of base pay structure, that's where a lot of your margins are going to the bonus programs. Secondly, 28% of contractors face payroll audits each year, which creates compliance risk that can be mitigated through a more effective pay strategy. Third thing is average lost revenue utilization when drivers return to the terminal early is 2.75 hours. What does that mean? Wasted operational window or underutilization of that resource. Those resources are supposed to be on the road generating revenue, not parked back in the building at 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You want to say something about that, Ken?
Absolutely. It's tough to generate revenue when that truck is sitting in the station. Say it's 2 o'clock and you plan it to be out till 5 and you do 20 stops per hour. That's 60 stops of lost revenue there. Even just at $3, you're staring $3 a stop, which is the bare minimum. You're staring at $60 worth of lost revenue there. And you do that on 4 trucks, guess what? You've just added a truck because with that's got to go out and do 120 stops. Oh no, I give my guys a bonus for stop pay over 100 stops. So you're not only adding a truck there, you're going to increase your wages, your fuel, and all that. And like I said, 2.75 hours is significant with that truck sitting back in the building at 2 o'clock. And that comes from day pay and the belief that I pay them for a day, they go out and get it done. I don't care if they get it done early. And people say, well, they'll just slow down if I pay them by the hour. I guarantee you they would slow down anyhow because they have their glass ceiling that they don't want to do more than X number of stops. Because if you said, hey, I want you to stay out an extra 2 hours, you got to pay me more. So that's where that lost opportunity of 2.75 on a daily pay rate comes into play.
So the main takeaway is that your pay strategy has a direct impact on your overall operational efficiency and profitability. As Network 2.0 models evolve, new approaches to driver pay are needed to optimize performance and so you can make money doing it. So the traditional day pay model, right? That's what most folks are using. So the advantages to it is it's simple, it's easy to administer, easy to explain to drivers. That's how they think. They need a certain amount of money each day to pay their bills, to pay their car payment, whatever it is. Gives you some predictable costs, sorta, as long as you don't have a exotic bonus structure attached to something basic. And it's familiar to drivers. That's another thing. Oh, it's what we've always done. Why? Because we've always done it that way. That's makes it good. But it is familiar to drivers and they get it. The disadvantages are the day pay model. The drivers say, what? I don't need to punch in and punch out because it doesn't matter. No one cares about that. It doesn't matter. It does matter and if you've been through a payroll audit, you now know why it matters. Another thing is that we just talked about it, resource underutilization. Ken just talked about that. Reduces your profitability and increases your costs. That's a disadvantage of the day pay model. We can show you that 100 times if you want to see it. And it opens you up for overtime lawsuits. That's no good. All right. So the benefits of hourly pay: improved compliance, meets labor standards and reduces audit risk through accurate time tracking. Increased accountability. Drivers become more conscious of time management and efficiency. Management is forced to watch what drivers are doing. Guess what? When you start tracking everybody's hours and you show them to the drivers, guess what they start doing? They start looking too, because for some reason they think that something's not right, or no, I didn't start at this time. I didn't end at that time. They start watching it as well. And one of the biggest things in this entire business is watching what the drivers are doing, resource utilization, and coming up here, and this is what we talked about last week, but coming up here very soon is something called the wave dispatch. It's going to make it a lot easier to try to track your hours, how many hours something is happening, how many hours per dispatch when folks are being paid by the hour instead of by the day. So we've talked about this many times before, but building an accountability culture, that's not just accountability culture, but changing your driver culture, right? So if we can get some recognition going in your business culture, you want to celebrate efficiency milestones. So somebody's doing well, make sure everybody knows it. This is my favorite thing, transparency, share performance metrics openly. If everybody knows what everybody else is doing, what do they spend most of their time doing? Trying to figure out what everybody else is doing. So if you just show them, let's just say how productive somebody can be or anything like that, then they start caring about it, right? Setting clear expectations, define success metrics explicitly, and establish a foundation of trust and respect. That's what another thing that happens when you're transparent with what everything that's
Can
going
I
on.
add to this, Jeff?
Please do.
We had a great response to the observation ride. I had sent out a lot of those last week. And you want to talk about accountability, recognition, transparency, clear expectations, and mutual trust. It all starts with that. If you can have your BC or yourself go out and do an observation ride with the driver, you now have established standards for that work area, for what the stops per hour should be, and what can be accomplished on that route. They can't deny it anymore. Yeah, of course they're going to say, "Oh, this is the easiest day I ever had," which is always happens at about 2:30 in the afternoon when they don't have any more stops on the day you do an observation ride with them. But doing those observation rides builds every one of these in this accountability culture. So thanks, Jeff.
Yep, absolutely. So if you were going to, let's say you're paying the folks by the day now, okay? How do I transition to paying them by the hour? One of the things we would tell you not to do is just to flick the switch and say, okay, tomorrow we're going to start paying everybody hour. That's not how that goes. First, you'd want to make a plan, evaluate your current operation, identify specific pain points with the day pay model. Mostly can calculate potential savings and compliance improvements with what you're going to get with an hourly structure. Now, before you even think about making this happen, and it's not just this, but any kind of changes you're going to make in the operation, you have to recruit. Why? Why, Ken?
Because you will lose people, and if you don't have people to replace them, you'll get desperate and offer to pay them what they want paid and how they want paid.
Which doesn't change anything, right? But now you got to recruit because some of the folks aren't going to what you're going to ask them to do. The other technique that works pretty good is as you bring the new recruits on, guess what you do? Those new recruits are hourly folks, not necessarily under your current pay structure. That works. It takes a long time to change all this that way, but that's what that works. And just like anything else, you want to communicate, gather feedback, and make adjustments to improve efficiency, monitor the KPIs, and then watch stops per hour productivity religiously, just like I know we're doing right now. Okay, we talked about bonuses a little bit before. I know everybody on here is going to say, no, you can't do that. This doesn't work. Okay, you can get productivity without paying bonuses. How do I do that? If you have visible metrics that would create natural competition, that's what we were saying before. So just the story here is anytime I ever took over a terminal that was in big trouble, the first thing that I would do is find the biggest whiteboard I possibly could and list all the contractors on the board. Here's your name. Here's yesterday's service. We used to call it, what did we used to call it? Local inbound service back then. Inbound
Yep.
local service. Here's your service. Guess what? Everybody saw that. Who didn't care? Or who didn't it bother? The folks that were doing well. Who would complain the most?
People not doing well are doing what they're supposed to.
That's right, because it's not their fault. Anyway, that's one way to get productivity. You can list productivity measurements if that's what you want to do, or somehow share them with folks, and you're going to get responses. You're going to get people interested in what you got going on. Some of it may not be nice, but you'll get it. And then, well, we just said celebrate top performers regularly, right? So recognize the good. In fact, in the Performance IQ program, I think Ken and Bob are doing this now. But sometimes they send out not necessarily a list of everybody, but here's your top five performers for yesterday, right? Are you guys still doing that?
We are. It was part of the driver program that was written, and it works real well. I always like to list the top five performers for a day. It does go a long way.
So some folks, and then this is what you'd want to look for when you recruit new drivers, but there are some folks that want to get into this business because maybe they want to be a BC. Maybe they want to be a contractor. There's folks on here right now that used to be preloaders and drivers that now own these businesses. If you get those folks, they'll care about what's going on, and you can get you need to pay them well, but they'll do things without necessarily getting some sort of bonus, right? And then another way to get productivity without bonuses is to reward efficiency with preferred shifts. So, we say this a lot. People wonder if this works or not, but 410s, Ken, you want to
Yeah,
tell us
it's
what
sure it's
410s are all about?
popular because what it does, it rotates the weekends off, and it's every fifth or sixth week, somebody would get a 4-day weekend. And the other thing it does, it improves attendance because if a person was going to miss, rather than missing 1/5 of a paycheck or 1/6, if they're working 6 days a week, they're going to be losing 25% of their income for that week, and they can't afford to do that. And
Okay, so this all can be done. Just have to set your mind to doing it. And in the interest of trying to keep our meetings shorter, we're going to go then see if there's any questions or comments today about driver pay.
we don't have any so far, but if we can go back to that, Jeff, one of the benefits of day pay was that you would know what your costs were, you know what your labor rates were. Productivity without bonuses, you're going to know what your labor rates are. Productivity with bonus, it's going to vary. You might pay somebody $1.25 per stop over 130 stops. You might pay somebody $1.10 per stop with over 150 stops. So that's all going to vary. You don't know what your costs are going to be. Of course, the more stops the CSP does in a day, guess what happens to their rate per stop? It goes down because you've got anywhere from 35 to 25% of your pay, your total stop pay is in a fixed settlement. And that's an oxymoron because that fixed becomes variable as you add more volume into it. So if you've got 350 and now all of a sudden I'm paying somebody an extra $1.50 a stop above their already day rate, you're going to run into some pay wage issues where you're much above that 45%. And once again, you don't know what your cost is. Productivity without bonuses comes close to that day pay for you to know what your costs are, the predictability of your cost. You agree with that, Jeff?
Yeah, you know what? I'm wondering, wouldn't it be worth it to try to figure out who the most productive drivers in the industry are and just follow their bonus program?
I think so, and it might be $0.
Oh, would that be UPS? So what
It
does
could
their
be.
bonus program look like?
It definitely could. They used to have a program that I don't think exists anymore, where if you completed a 9.5 hour a day in 9 hours, you got paid for the nine and a
Nine.
half hours. I think the union did away with that. But once again, and their service standards aren't easy to meet. Hardly anybody can run right at what they call scratch. So it's very difficult to run at scratch. In fact, they do not have a bonus. Is it a significant wage? Yes, it is. There's no doubt a significant wage. But once again, they know what their labor rate is. They know what their costs are, and their managers are held to meet those costs every day. And how do they do that? It's on stops per dispatch, or they'll call them stops per car
Right.
in the UPS world. We have a question. All right. Can you touch on pay? Can you touch on OT pay on an hourly requirements? Our cutaways are all over the minimum. GVW, that allows us to not have to pay OT, but seems like this is all over the place depending on who you ask at FedEx. You want that, Jeff, or I can handle it?
Go ahead.
Yeah. If it is over 10,000 pounds, and depending on the state you're in, you do not have to pay overtime. That is correct. At the same time, if you've got people in a cutaway and then you got somebody in a transit and you pay the person in the transit overtime, isn't the person in the cutaway going to say, why don't I get overtime pay? So it can lead to unfairness in your pay. Certain states, I believe Colorado would be one, and California, anything over 8, unless you schedule 4 10s, would get overtime. So I think that's where you get the variance, depending on who you ask at FedEx. But if you're in 46 states, you don't have to pay overtime. But like I said, you get into some pay discrepancies if you've got transits and cutaways and you're not paying the cutaway drivers the overtime. Anything to add to that, Jeff?
Nope.
No.
I think you're good.
So, yeah, and that rule was created for trucking per se. The 26,000 or the over 10,000 pound rule was created because you can't pay tractor. It's very difficult to pay tractor trailer drivers hourly in their traditional truckload environment. You can at FedEx, you can at UPS because they are established runs, but like I said, that no overtime rule really was for the truckload environment and has been adopted and utilized in this environment. Doesn't make it wrong, doesn't make it right, but that's what it was created for. I hope that answered your question. Are there any more questions out there? It's a quick call today, and that's probably good after a holiday. We will be back again next week with some more information, hopefully, and we're probably going to see some light volume this week with the holiday. You probably had some early closures on Friday, just like FedEx CSPs have call offs on Friday and Tuesday after the holiday. So do your shippers. So even though it's the end of the week or the end of the month, you might see a little bit lighter volume this week. And I would expect next week to be a lot heavier. So please prepare for that. If there are no other questions, we will wrap this up. And if we don't talk to you before next Tuesday, please have a safe and profitable week. Thank you very much.